This is SSN
Story Studio Network.
Hi, I'm Rene Gatien, and this is the Powerful Connections podcast. For over 40 years, I've been involved in planning and building high-voltage projects. My company, DGG5 Advising, is the opportunity maker you need for your energy and construction projects. My guests and I are going to share our experiences and how we have brought projects to successful completion. Today, we're going to talk about relationships and connections. This is really the heart and soul of why I wanted to do this podcast series, Powerful Connections. Today's guest, one of my older brothers, Rene Gatien. He is very well known in the utility industry and many associations and levels of government activity in the energy world. This includes the OEB, the IESO, the EDA, ESA, Hydro One, and many others. All these acronyms are fun-filled for our industry. For those of you listening, we want to review the value of relationships as well as the development of them. Rene, before we get started, tell those listening a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Good morning, Dean, and thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. So like you, I was raised on the family farm where we learned to drive equipment and trucks pulling triaxle floats full of hay. We repaired machines and water systems in the barn as we looked after mostly beef cattle. I went to the University of Waterloo in engineering. However, I was distracted a bit, didn't do so well in the first year, and had to take some time away. So during the almost 2 years away from school, our father, Clary, decided I should start an apprenticeship as a line person, and he sent me with PowerTel crews to Moosonee. I continued that through my co-op work terms when I did go back to university, and after graduation, I continued until I got my journeyman line person ticket. I went to Brampton Hydro in 1981 to the engineering department, attained my PEng, my professional engineering certificate and stamp, and I became a supervisor there. I moved over to operations a few years later to become the lines manager. In the late 80s, Clary was retiring, and I joined you and our brother Wayne as one of 4 partners in PowerTel. I enjoyed the work, had lots of fun working with you guys, but the travel took me away from home too much, just as we were starting a family with my wife, Lori, and I. So I went back to utilities at Guelph Hydro as the VP of Operations for 11 years. I moved over to Waterloo North Hydro in 2002 as a new president and CEO, where I spent the next 20 years. And the last 2 years of my career was merging Waterloo North Hydro and Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro into ENOVA Power, which came into effect in September of 2022. So just a little over a year ago, I was the co-CEO of ENOVA with my good friend Jerry Van Utegem, the CEO from Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro, until we both retired in August of this year. So that gives you a little bit of background. I certainly was in a lot of those associations and acronyms that you mentioned, and was on the board of directors at the EDA, the Electrical Distributors Association, and became chair of the board. So there was lots of relationship building and relationship testing along the way and all of those different things. So hope that gives you enough for a background.
Thanks very much. In episode 1, I discussed the Gatien family and growing up at the table of Ida and Clary Gatien, and it was the background we grew up with, understanding how relationships were developed, but also enhanced by breaking bread was the term. The simple item of a meal or coffee or other to get to know who people are, and the social part of putting people at ease to discuss their needs or what they were struggling with. And this will help you develop the solution required. Today, that could be a Teams or Zoom meeting, but face-to-face meeting definitely has more impact, but sometimes it's just not feasible. But the connections people have in the industry are the key to putting the right people together. And we're going to talk about those from a different perspective, but with similar results. So the outcomes, the successful outcomes, this is what we're trying to do. So Rene, give us some perspective on how to expand on this.
So all of my life, but certainly the last 20 years, relationships and making good connections with people is key to the success of my business, and I'd say any business. And there's several relationships to think about. In mine, the ones that I can think about, if I put them in not necessarily in order, but a list of things that you need to think about, it's been employees, partners, and I probably have 2 or 3 different kinds of partners, shareholders in my case, utilities, customers or clients, as people would refer to them, and vendors or suppliers. Those are probably the main groups. Other ones I would add along the way becomes government or regulators as well. So let me explain a little bit further. The most important one for me has always been employees, and the things that we've done with employees extends to everybody else. So a lot of these principles I'll talk about really goes into all of these different categories. So whether you're a small entrepreneur or a company of a few hundred like Waterloo North Hydro was or ENOVA was, you need a good team to work with and support you. I learned a phrase from a friend of mine, David Chalmers of Nexus Human Capital. It's something I've done all my working life, but I did not have it as well worded. He taught us that leadership is achieving meaningful results with the help and commitment of others. And that's something I've tried to do both in my business and my purpose or my personal life. I want to be of value to people. And so by following this thing of saying you're going to do something that's meaningful and you need this commitment and collaboration of others to get it done, that's just been a guiding principle for me for a long time. With employees, I followed a couple of books I read a long time ago. First one was called Break All the Rules, and the other one was Good to Great. The premise of that first book is make sure employees know what's expected of them, make sure they have the tools, training, and experience to do their work, and then get out of their way and let them do their best work. Encourage them or make sure their supervisors encourage them, check in on them. But the big thing for me as the CEO, I considered myself, instead of chief executive officer, coach of everyone. And that's what I did. I would check in on them, have conversations, have an interest in them and their life outside of work, but take moments to coach them whenever I could. And those things made powerful relationships and powerful connections with those people. So those people then looked after our customers very well because they knew what was expected from me, the CEO of the company, and I made sure they had the ability to get it done. So they liked it. Go get this done, get out of their way. Partners was the next one I talked about, and partners can take many forms. So I considered my executive team more as my partners than my direct reports. It's kind of like when we were working together, we were partners in business in what we did. So these folks managed budgets in the tens of millions of dollars, and from my perspective, they should be autonomous and accountable to run their part of the business. They don't need me looking over their shoulder. Another thing that David explained to us was something called VABEs. Values, assumptions, beliefs, and expectations. It's how we think the world should behave. So we need to understand our own VABEs and the VABEs of the people we are dealing with to have a good and really effective relationship. I made sure in my dealing with employees from first Break All the Rules, folks understood what I expected of them. They knew what I wanted, where we wanted to go, and what outcomes we were looking for. So early on at Waterloo North Hydro, I had a VP come to an executive meeting. And they had a difficult decision with a project and a customer. They knew my values and expectations. We were a good match in our VABEs with this person. And so I said to them, if this was your company, what would you do? He explained his answer and his reasoning and his approach to the customer, and it was good. I liked the answer. I supported him, as did his colleagues from the executive team. And that was the cool part. They all got on board and said, yeah, that's a good idea. They added some thoughts to it, and this person felt really good, and away they went and did what they had to do. So over time, the team would start to do this, and they really knew how to sucker me in, to be honest. One of the team would sometimes provide the issue and then provide their solution with the words. If this were my company, here's how I would approach this problem. And they knew right away they had me there, but the conversation started and away we would go. So they were my partners. Other partners I had were CAOs at the municipalities, and they were my eyes and ears at what was going on with my municipal shareholders. And the partnerships were very important with them. And you talked about breaking bread. I would take opportunities to meet them for breakfast, for lunch. We would certainly, when we got invited to industry golf tournaments that were nearby or some of the university golf tournaments, we would tend to take one of the CAOs and CFOs from municipalities with us. We got more business done on the golf course talking. And I had a really sticky situation with one of them one time between their engineering and our engineering. By the end of the round, we had sorted things out probably by, 9 holes. I touched base with my VP of engineering partway through and said, look, if we could do this, would you be happy? And he said, yes. He said, how did you get there? I said, don't ask, but we'll work on that. So I went through the rest of it with this CAO for the rest of the course, and they went back to their person. I went to mine. We got a meeting going, and it worked out really, really well. So that was one that happened over outside the office. The other partners I had that I would consider very strong is we were in a organization called Grid Smart City. Grid Smart City is a group of 15 LDCs, that's local electricity distribution companies. And the CEOs of those 15 LDCs, we were like-minded, like size. We would get together for the benefit of, it was our cooperative. We got together for purchasing, HR things, but a lot of it was, as CEOs, we could moan, groan, and complain to each other and know it wasn't going anywhere. You could talk about anything, and you didn't bring this stuff back to the other side to hold it against anybody. We really talked. We got a lot done there. It was just fabulous doing that.
Those
Customers
are
or
those old
clients,
green lighting sessions.
Yeah, customers and clients. We used to have breakfast sessions for many of them, for special classes of customers, and different things that would go on. For some of them, we'd invite their operations people. We'd invite, for certain programs, the electricians that looked after all of our major customers, because they knew how to sell the program, not us. And so it was fabulous to get those things done. And the last is vendors or suppliers. And as you know, with all different kinds of events and conferences and stuff, you get to see them a lot. You get to have breakfast. You get to go have suppers. One of my favorite times, and a long, long time friend, Kenny Maskell, him and I went to a lot of things together and spent a lot of windshield time together. And when you're motoring down the road, you get talking about family and other stuff. And we used to laugh. You have to have laughs in the middle of all this stuff. And Kenny and I just used to have the most fun driving down the road together with things. And, I did the same with Jerry Van Utigam. That's what led to talking about the merger of our companies, was really developing that relationship, spending time to get to know people and understand them, get to know their VABEs, see how their VABEs match up with your VABEs. And generally, you're going to find people that match your VABEs. And if you go from there, you can have a great time. There, I probably said way too much, but
no,
that's what you
it's all good. No matter what you do, it has to be professional and respectful. Stay focused on the task at hand and create the trust required to start and move on. And one of the philosophies I've always talked about with people, make sure anything you do or say will not embarrass your mother. And then, will what you say or do bother you if it's printed on the front page of the national newspaper? So making those connections needs to be done at the highest level and as transparent as possible, and kind of rules to live by. Over time, this will help make the relationships flourish in the best way. Tell me a little bit about what your starting point with people you would suggest in starting a working relationship.
Don't say something that's going to embarrass you. You have to get to know the person first before you can start to do things. If somebody has a sarcastic wit, once you get to know them, you understand where they're coming from. So you're absolutely right. Make sure that what you're doing is very professional. You need to earn somebody's respect and trust before you can start to test that respect and trust. Early stages for me is take a genuine interest in the person. Who are they? What do they do? Ask them about themselves. Get them talking about themselves so that you get an understanding of who this person is. And that's really the only way you're going to get to start to understand what their VABEs are. Another thing that I do is express appreciation. I did that all the time with my EA for all the things they did. I appreciate them doing their job. So I always expressed appreciation. That simple act can really boost somebody's spirits. And I did that right down to the frontline people. And those kinds of things lead to a better relationship. That can lead to better work quality because they want to do this stuff for you. And better productivity and just fosters that relationship. Certainly good communication. You want to make sure that you understand what that other person is asking of me. And I always want to know, well, what outcome are you looking for? I always get around to that sooner or later, and usually sooner, especially if I can feel somebody's trying to couch it because they aren't sure how to tiptoe around what they're trying to ask. I'll try to cut to the chase and say, okay, so what can we do for you? How can we solve your issues and problems? And if I'm asking something of them, then I make sure that I put it in a way that's clarified. When I was younger and I had eng techs reporting to me, I would give them a new project. I'd explain the project, what I'm looking for the outcome. Here's the parameters and the outside things. And then here's what I want you to do, and come see me if you got any questions. And then I'd check in on them. But I wanted to say to them, so tell me now, what do you see of this project? Because I would want them to clarify for me what they're doing. And as I went on over time with my VPs or my EA, and especially my CFO, who did a lot of reports, I would make sure that they're giving me understanding of what I'm looking for, size, quantity, whatever, before they got started, so they didn't get a breakaway. And I have to see this project come in where I wanted 2 pages and they give me 20. And to have to say to them, I want to make sure they know up front what I'm looking for. And I think the last thing that I probably did, and this is both internal and external partners for sure, is realistic deadlines and goals. Don't rush things just because. I always, when I would give work to my people, say to them, where can you fit this in? And make sure that they can. And if they needed more time for something, I would say, okay, absolute latest I needed is this, but it can't be later. Don't come and ask me for more, later on. I would do the same thing with my other partners that I talked about, some of the ones that were external. If I had to deliver to them or them deliver to me, I would make sure we're all on the same page. So in those early stages of relationships, it's really getting to know who the person is, be very genuine about them, make sure that you're helpful to them. And I've got some stuff I'll touch on a little later on because it seems more appropriate then. There are some things that I've always done to try and make sure that I'm helpful to those people and they're helpful to me. And when I'm appreciative of that, it really seems to cement those relationships and lead to more things. And don't embarrass your mother. Yeah.
People have very good spidey senses, and people need to know you genuinely care about them and their dilemma and situation or needs. And that's what you've covered. And the biggest item to me is being a good listener. You know, the old saying, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen more than you talk. In order to have that other person share their information, they need to know you're listening. And this is a simple item, but critical to moving forward, I believe. So what are your thoughts and suggestions a little bit on sincerity and listening?
One of the things that we learned along the way is something called a personal mission statement. And I really would suggest that people do that. When I first had to do that and write it on a piece of paper, I struggled. There were certain things I knew about me, but when I put it on paper, I said, okay, this is me. This is what I've been doing. And it got tested a few times, especially when we went through some of the merger discussions. It got tested, and I would go back to saying, this is who I am. Don't let these discussions take me away from that. So a personal mission statement, it's something you should think about quite a bit. It needs to be something you refer to from time to time to keep you on track being you, really. You've heard a little bit of mine already, but if I took it, the whole thing from top to bottom goes something like this. I want to be a person that's going to achieve these meaningful results about a common purpose with the help and commitment of others, both in business and my personal life. So I want to be of value to people. One of the things I like to do is lend my knowledge in conversation, presentations, and listening or coaching. That's something I love to do, and that's something I've said I will always do. I want to make sure that what I expect of others is understood. So it doesn't matter if it's employee partners, my shareholders, my board directors, my vendor suppliers. They should know what I'm looking for. They've got, whether it's tools, training, whatever, to get this stuff done for me, and so they can do their best. When I'm working with folks, whether it's internal or external, I want to make sure that I give them the opportunities to experiment, learn, and excel. It's something that's, especially for employees, important. But if you're testing relationships with a new vendor or partner or supplier, you want to give them those opportunities as well so that you know what you're dealing with and they can show you some creative stuff you hadn't even thought about. I listen to them carefully to understand their VABEs because that's important in understanding where we're going. I provide feedback to folks. So whether it's feedback to employee or feedback to a partner, feedback to a vendor or supplier, I want to help others understand what worked well in our relationship and what needs improvement. I told you I'm a coach. I take advantage of every teaching opportunity to coach not only others, but myself, because I'll come away from something and go, oh, that didn't work well. I better do this like this next time so that that's a better relationship. And one of the things I always did is I didn't surprise my people. And my people included all those folks I talked about, especially my employees and my executive team, but my CAOs, my other partners, my board members, my board chair especially. I wouldn't surprise them. I'm not going to be quick to judge them in how they do something because I want to understand it. However, I expect the same in return, and I make that very clear to people. So I won't surprise you. You won't surprise me. I won't be quick to judge. If I jump in with an idea, listen to it and don't judge me. I'm not always good at that. One of the things that I'm terrible at is I want to jump in with the answer. And I really need to go to that next part, which is the listening. I got to stop. I got to slow myself down and listen. And one of the things I learned a long time ago, I heard somebody use this line, and I've picked it up and used it for the last 25 years. Somebody was saying something, and you could tell there was something more, but that's as far as they were going. And all the person said was, tell me some more. I've used that all my life with everybody at every level, including government people, regulators, you name it. When I feel like I'm only getting that first part of the story as the intro, I'll say, tell me some more. It's amazing where the conversation goes, Dean. It goes all over the map. However, I better make sure and listen to that next piece and take the notes, because if I don't, all of a sudden they've told me lots of things and sometimes maybe bared their soul to me, especially with employees who are having personal difficulties at home and found an ear that would listen. I need to understand, and then at the end of it, have to say to them what we've talked about before. What can I do to help? What outcome are you looking for? And those are the things that really closes the gap on that, I think, both the sincerity side and the listening side.
Well, it gets you to what the points of execution are. So we talked about this a little bit with Chris Benedetti from Sussex Strategy Group back in episode 3 about being visible. You need to get an understanding as early as possible what this relationship will lead to, how visible you need to be. That could mean just being available for a call or an email. It could mean getting more involved in advising directly or even meeting with the person inside their organization or as an advisor in outside activities. I've helped support people in the internal discussions as well as being a support in an outside meeting for a customer, and learn what the relationship is and stay focused on how you grow it and how you support the needs of the person you are interacting with. Know your role and position and stay in your lane. That's the biggest one for me. Is you can bring so much to them, but you got to go one step at a time. And that was part of the listening part. Be prepared to help someone or a company get through things they need your help with. So do you feel that visibility is a big item? And do you feel being the visible person as a CEO, the corporate face, an association of executive, interacting with many industries, where do you feel the advantages and disadvantages of being visible or being in the background?
Well, being visible the right amount is huge. It's something that I know I get distracted at times with business. When we were going through the merger, one of the things I really missed is I did not have as much time to see employees as I used to have. I missed them, and I think they missed me. And I think one of the things you have to remember is when you are visible to the different things, you have to decide what level of commitment you're going to be able to keep up, because you'll need to do that. Early on in a relationship, you likely have to be more visible. And that's something I certainly did a lot of when I first went to Waterloo North Hydro. I think it surprised the heck out of people because I did that management by wandering around. And that was some of the things that, for me, let me find out not only what was going on in the business, who did what, and who the people were. And that was my most fun. Getting out and about and seeing people is the most fun, and doing some of the things, going out to see a crew in the field and watch what they're doing. And when they come down, I'm in their office now. They're not in mine. And they feel much more comfortable, and they're happy to talk about things. Some of the things that we certainly did to be visible with employees is we had a lot of events that forced us out of our offices and into doing things for the employees or with the employees. So this could be things like, going into the summer barbecue, where the executive team would be the ones who were doing the barbecuing, and we're serving and and barbecuing for all of our employees in a big kind of a thing. We do the same at the end of summer. Welcome back and get everybody going again from summer and do a United Way barbecue. So they saw us as people, that not as the executive team, and we were certainly very close in things. We did golf tournaments where it was mix and mingle, and some people, really were very nervous about getting matched up with the CEO and my wife as the, golf partners when we get out on the golf course. I think they found out very quickly, and probably more from my wife than me, that, we were just people. And I think those kinds of different things that we did, I, played on a baseball team and did some hockey with them. And those were all things where we were there and visible. Kids' Christmas party with all of the employees and their kids that were under a certain age. Just go in and talk to people and see them and walk around was very, very huge. And it was that thing of when somebody had that opening line, it's, oh, tell me some more. And some more could be tell me about your kids, your visit home over Christmas, your plans for summer holidays. All of those things made you visible. In terms of industry, if you don't go to things, people don't know who you are and you miss out on the conversations. So we talked about this, before. A Zoom meeting and stuff like that are great. But if that's all you ever do, it's very hard to get to know who these folks are. And we found this out through COVID. Our Grid Smart City group knew each other ahead of time, so we were able to jump into COVID real quickly. We had new people join us as a CEO retired and a new person came in. It was really hard to get to know them over Zoom. So once COVID was over, we get back to in-person meetings. I would always get there earlier for a meeting. I did the same with the EDA board of directors, and I do the same with industry conferences. Get there early, see some people that you haven't seen them in a long time, or I haven't met this person in person at all, and go and see them and talk to them. Very, very important to keep that level of visibility. I can tell you over the merger, we got very busy and didn't have time to get some of those. It's amazing the things you miss. Hop on a Zoom call to pick up a conference and you don't catch all the side conversations. So you need to decide the level of visibility. Once you get to know somebody, you can keep things up over Zoom. You can keep things up over a phone call. Email is probably the last way to keep up relationships, but sometimes you got to do that. But email doesn't give you the tone of communication or things like that.
No.
It's all these other things where you can chat and talk to people, and even with a Zoom meeting, to be able to see the person on the other side, you can read the body language and see what's going on. But nothing beats seeing people in person. There's no two ways about it.
You've talked about opening up about yourself and how it can be improved over a coffee or meal or just, meeting. Our father always told us you need to break bread with somebody to get to know them. But those, it's not a formal meeting or a business activity. It's a learning opportunity. And where do you download as much information as possible to understand the task and the situation by being in that comfortable situation? So people are at ease and able to communicate more when you're in that comfortable situation. So, we've talked about those experiences of being outside the more formal discussions. Ego, it's a tough one to get through. In today's world, there can be uncomfortable or tough items to deal with. It is the background and behind the scenes hard work that is more important than any spotlight. Not being offended or taking things personally, but receiving the information or criticism and how to manage this is where people find huge value. Many times people will agree to disagree, but considering the other person's position or opinion is the only way to get to a solution to resolve it. And sometimes you need to end a meeting or even exit to gather next steps and what the communication needs to be. But the relationships will build with your biggest supporters or users of your service, but also with those that are opposed to you doing or representing other people. If in the toughest moments you stay focused, professional, and respectful, you'll be very successful and found to be of utmost integrity. That will win more battles than drawing a line in the sand. So stay focused on the task at hand, the challenges you need to solve, and presenting the parties involved. This representation will give you good results and, I believe, repeat business. So tell me about some of your toughest situations and the successful actions that got you through them.
Wow, that's a lot packed in there. I'll give you a few different ones. The big thing I would say probably starts back with what you said. You hopefully have developed some good relationships before you get to those tough situations. If you come to that tough situation and that's where you want to introduce yourself and build a relationship, you're too late. You're in trouble. And you need to have done those things ahead of time. I'll give you one where I did it the wrong way and almost cost me a career. But we had a change of shareholders and a change of CAO. So shareholders, meaning I shouldn't say a change of shareholders. We had a change of the mayor and council, and there are shareholders for one of the three shareholders we had. The CAO had changed also, so they didn't know who we were. And there was a couple of things that we just did like we normally did and didn't take our time to get to know them, explain things and all of that. So after one of the board meetings, I noticed the meeting going outside after the board meeting. And the meeting after the meeting is sometimes a terrible thing to see when it's your board members and shareholders talking. What I found out is we had gone too quickly. We had jumped right into a tough situation, explained what had happened, what we're doing, and here's where we're going, without me taking the time ahead of time to talk to them and explain to them, here's what we do as a business, here's how things operate, give them time to ask questions prior to getting to this tough situation. So I found out probably several years later, one of my directors, who was a very good supporter of me, one of my board members, said the conversation went to such a point where there was some contemplation of maybe we were no longer the right people to lead this business. And that was my fault because I really had not taken the time to develop that relationship before we got into the situation. And I think I was 2 years getting over that, getting that shareholder and mayor and council to trust us enough. In that time frame, the CAO had left and another one came in. And when that CAO came in, I made sure to take a lot of time to talk to them, explain who we were, and then have them help rebuild that relationship with the rest of the council. So that was when I really needed. Ones where I'd worked on it, where the tough situation presented itself and the relationships were fabulous. The one I can think of is COVID. We all went into COVID and didn't know what the heck was going on. I mean, it happened so quickly. And stories and rumors abounded, and especially for us and our employees and the unions, next thing we know, we're being told, oh yeah, such and such a utility is sending all their people home with pay, just go home. And I'm thinking, that's a tough way to run a business. So knowing the CEO of that company, I called them up and said, so what are you doing? He explained. I said, okay, here's the story of what I was told. And he said, what? He was livid. He said, we're considering what we have to do. We told them go home for a day, but they're all coming back the next day once we're ready to get at it. And I said, okay. I said, I got a couple other things. He said, I don't have time right now. I have to go and explain the relationship to my union rep because they definitely took us out of context. And he said, I got to fix that one. But we went through things where we would talk to each other, the 15 of us, almost daily at sometimes, but we explained what we were up to. Ego was put aside because nobody was trying to prove they were better than the other. We were all trying to get through this together. And it was a fabulous relationship. It saved us lots of problems, lots of heartaches and headaches, and it helped us get through this together. We all figured out how to do this together very quickly, and how to keep our workforce very safe, and how to make sure we could still serve our customers. So it was a good thing that we had established those. The other one was a particularly tough set of negotiations. I'm trying to remember if it was in 2016 or 2020, but it was a tough set of union negotiations. We were having some difficulties. The inflation was really starting to come down, but people still wanted those higher rates. So we were having some issues with that. There were some other issues going on as well. And we got to a point where I could tell the two groups at the table weren't comfortable in opening up to each other. They weren't comfortable about talking about the issue. And we always worked at outcomes, not positions. We didn't take positions at negotiations. So it was always, what's the outcome we're looking for? So things were not going well. And I said, I think we need a break. And once we had taken the break, I went down the hall, knocked on the door, asked the union rep, could I have a chat with them? And I made sure that, everybody knew I had some things I had to ask questions about. Could I talk to the union rep so that the rest of the union team didn't feel like I was doing something in secret? And they said, sure, no go ahead. So talked to this person outside, and I said, can you tell me what's going on? And they started to make some disparaging remarks. And I said, okay, how about we stop? We're not at the table. It's you and I. Tell me some more about what's going on. And they explained a few things we had said. We used a couple of keywords that were not good. And I didn't realize it. It didn't mean much to us. It meant a lot to them. And then they wanted to ask us some questions. We had put something on the table that they really didn't quite want. And they thought we really wanted it. We had been told that they wanted it. So when all was said and done, neither of us really wanted this. Now, a revised version, they were quite happy about it. Okay. And there was something else we were asking for that we weren't asking in the right way. So with the conversation, they came back and said, if you can do this and this, I can probably convince, them to go through with it. And I said, okay, I need to talk to my team, but can I make sure I understand this fully from your folks? And they said, sure. So we went into the room. I asked some questions, and they gave me some answers and added a little more context than the union rep did. So I said, okay, I need to talk to my team. I went back to them. I said, so if you could get this and this instead of what you're asking for, would you be happy? They said, yeah. I said, okay, we've been asking it the right way, wrong way. We need to do it this way and bring this forward. So by taking that moment to talk to that union rep, to trust the relationship that I had built with them, we really averted what could have become a strike, and away we went. My last thing I did is...
The relationship helped you with clarity.
Huge. So the last thing I did is, once we agreed on the writing, I went back up to the union team and I asked the rep, I really want to hear from them that they're all happy and they can sell this to their members, because I don't want anybody to be saying, oh, we can't do this. So I went and I said, it's just me. So tell me, you guys, what do you want to do here? Is this something you are comfortable speaking to your folks about? And they all said, yeah, it was to a person, because I need to make sure that as much as we had to get a deal, they had to save face and be respectful when all was said and done. So that one worked well. I went back to our team, and the one new member of our executive said, so this is, like I said, 2016 or 2020. How long have you been working on that deal? I said, since 2002, and I first came to this place and I started to work on my relationship with the union because it was really bad the way we were at the time. And I said, every year I worked on that relationship to get it better and better, so that when a day like this came, when I had a really tough, bad thing, I could, rely on them. So that's where relationship really helped. Last one was with a customer. We had really messed up on something. I knew this customer from outside things. I knew them both through the Chamber of Commerce, through events around town, and they were a large business. So they were very important to us. I always made sure to talk to this person and chat about things. So things messed up. And I don't think they realized who they were sending it to, but they sent it to the VP of that area asking that the president get to see it. So this comes across, I recognize the name. So I picked up the phone and I called him and I said, we got a complaint at Waterloo North Hydro about such and such. And he said, yeah. I said, well, you asked it to go to the CEO. And I said, that's me. He said, my gosh, Rene, I forgot all about that. He said, you and I just talk about stuff. And I said, okay, tell me what's going on. So he told me, and I said, what outcome are you looking for? I'd like to see this and this. Okay. I don't think I can do the second one. I'll go and talk to my engineering VP, but I'm almost certain I can't do that. But I can pretty sure get you that first one and that third one. I'm quite sure I can get both of those. So let me see what I can do. He says, Jesus, you can get, number 1 and number 3 done. It was something like that. He said, I'd be happy. I said, okay, let me see what we can do. So go back to the VP of engineering, explain what was going on. They said, oh yeah, I can do that and that. Let me work on number 2. I'll see if I can get them something. So again, the relationship, both sides, the relationship with this customer, and then to go to the VP who trusted me and that I got the interpretation from the customer really, really worked. So it's those kinds of things that help when you get through it. I think the last test of things really was the what we did with the merger, because we knew what we were going to do. Jerry and I knew where we were heading with this, and it's really strange to have here's 2 CEOs of these 2 opposing companies working together, but we were good friends. We had built these businesses. We wanted them to survive, so we knew that the merger was probably the right thing to do. So we had to get our board members to trust us. We had to get our council members and mayors to trust us. And we had to get mostly our people to trust us. And the things that we did that were very key is we didn't make false promises about anything. We called a spade a spade. We kept our promises for the promises we made. And to get us out of a bad situation, we didn't say something that we knew we couldn't deliver on. We weren't going to do it for ego. And there were several times where people were mad at us, but we had to rely on that relationship that we'd built over many years, that they could trust who we were and what we were saying. And those are the very important things. There's no two ways about it. So I hope that touched on some of the things. I got more on, EDA board of directors or things that we did with regulators, but I think you got most of what you were looking for there.
Yeah, that was the points that I wanted to make, and it touches on the things that I want to get to in the best ways to communicate. And I think we covered that really well. And we've talked earlier about the need item of VABEs and the values and assumptions, beliefs and expectations. So I don't know if you have anything else to add on that before I get to my next item of collaborating, but I don't know if there's any other points you want to make on VABEs.
So VABEs are huge. You really need to understand yourself first. And that's that whole thing about who you are and what you do. When you learn what excites somebody, what makes them happy, what their values are, what their assumptions are about things, it really helps you understand how to frame something. And how I would frame something, it would be the same thing. And I'm not hiding anything. I'm not lying about things. It's just how I would express it to a line person, a CSR person, an engineering person, a supervisor, a manager, a VP, a board member, a council member, a regulator. Same idea, but I know based on who that person is, I've got to change my approach, and I've got to change the level of explanation, the type of explanation, the engagement, and I may have to ask them different kinds of questions to get them to understand where I'm going, all for the same subject. And that all has to do with understanding what that person's assumptions are, what their beliefs are, what their expectations are of me. Vendors and suppliers, so much the same thing, where you have to rely on those relationships with them. And really good vendors and suppliers and service providers, you'll talk to them many times over when you don't have an order for them. And so that when you do have an order, and especially a service provider where all of a sudden a customer's come to you and said, I need this. You're going, oh my gosh, to deliver that fast, I need to get so-and-so, and they need to be at the top of their game, and they need to do it for me right now. Well, your relationship of many years is what's buying you that quality of service and speed of service. No two ways about it. And that comes back to getting to know who those people are and what they're all about.
Many of the things I've done over the years have been successful in collaborating with others or other companies. Those relationships are usually well established. People understand working together is better. And I've had some great learning experiences well over the years on doing things differently and how they do things better. So in all those discussions of the different places, the boards, the associations of vendors, suppliers, talk to me a little bit about collaboration and about some of the great things that have happened because of collaborating.
I would say that just about anything I've run into that has been a great success has been because of collaborating. Leadership is about achieving those meaningful results towards a common purpose, because that's what you're doing with the help of commitment of others. That's both internally and externally. If you're open to saying to somebody, here's my issue, can you help me with it? It's amazing what people can come up with. And the big thing for me and for anyone is you need to be open to new ideas. You can't always say that, well, okay, that's fine, but that's not what I want to do. I was trying to help an organization, a small startup company where I'm on their board, and they had some fabulous people on that board that were helping them because they were young entrepreneurs getting started. Two of them are phenomenal folks that have started many companies and have become very wealthy over it and helped others become wealthy. And they just wanted to help. The issue was this person always had the right idea, never mind what somebody else has. And it really came around to the one day I said to them, something I learned a long time ago. If we change the way we look at things, the things that we look at as being important will change. And you'll go at things in a different manner. And so that's part of collaboration. If you're willing to learn that there's different things out there, different ideas, And the things that you are willing to look at might be different than the things you look at eventually are going to take on a whole different meaning of importance. And that's where collaboration is huge. With probably utilities, the biggest demonstration of immediate collaboration, and the team better knows who they're working with and who they trust, is when you have a major outage event. So, we had Christmas, I think it was 2013 or 2016, huge ice storm came in, and we lost about half of our customers, just like that. Supplies to half of them were gone. And so everybody jumps into action. People were gone on vacation. They're gone for Christmas vacation. And we had people call in to say, do you need us to come back? And we would say to them, here's what we need. You need to decide if you can come back or not. Don't risk yourself, but we need this number of people, and here's where we're going. We had folks showed up from all over the place. It was just amazing. So we had, within 24 hours, most of the customers back on. Within 48 hours, we had, I think the number was 95 or 96% of the customers back on. The ones that weren't needed stuff done, but pretty well anybody that we could reconnect, other than folks needing to repair a damaged service or customer-owned transformer or whatever, by Christmas morning, we had them all back on. And that was the collaboration of everybody. We had some contractors helped us. We had people who were normally engineering people. They were out delivering meals and looking after folks and checking on things. We had customer service folks who, they figured out their own rotations. Like they said, I'm going to come in for this shift, you come in for that, because they knew we were going around the clock. And, in my case, I used to be an operations person. So we ran larger crews during the day and daylight. At night, we had a smaller crew on. I said to them, look, I'll stay overnight as the ops person in the control room. You guys, the VP of operations and the superintendent, you guys go home, get some sleep, then come back in the morning ready to get at it. And it was fabulous. In the middle of one of those storms, a control room operator that came to us from GIS, we had all this information we were gathering from the field, and it was all in these huge spreadsheets. They took the information, they said, I can put this on a map for you. We said, what? I'll put this on a map for you. She sat down, she took the information, put it on a GIS map in layers. Here was primary issues, secondary issues, trees down, customer needing their own stuff. And then gave us these layers with these dots that showed up on the map in groups. And it's like, you just developed work assignment for crews. So we knew that a certain kind of crew was going to this area, a certain kind of crew to that area. When they came in the morning, the superintendent and the VP of operations said, oh my gosh, how did you do this? This is amazing, Rene. What you did is fabulous. I said, not me. Go see Jessica. She did all that. And it was the collaboration and me not being afraid to say, okay, you know how to do this. You got the tools and experience. Go do what you do best. And away she went. So we covered her on the control room desk for about 2 hours while she sorted it out. It saved us 8 or 10 hours for our crews. It was fabulous. So those kinds of things. The stuff we did through COVID was collaboration. The things that I've done with people over the years of introducing them to people. One of my good friends, Peter Vickery, he knows everybody under the sun. When I would get a new person in the industry and they're trying to figure out who different people are, I'd say, come with me, we're going to meet Peter. Or come with me, I'm going to go see Kenny or Angelo or some of those folks. So I made sure to introduce them to the people that I knew could help them on their career and help their company. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the way, they'd come back to me with something where the two of us would collaborate on something. And that relationship of doing that was well worth it.
Those are all the connections, and the leadership items are really good. So I'm going to run to a last item, the values, learning what people's values are and how you get them to work on a team can be hard and challenging, but you talked about some of those things and success stories today and techniques. Before we close, I just want to see if you have any final words as our time's getting tight. Tell me if there's any parting words for us.
I think that one thing about those thoughts that I said, if we change the way we look at things, the things we look at will change. That's been huge all my life, is when a problem has presented itself, it's just stop for a moment. Don't jump in. Have a look at it and say, can we look at this thing differently? And if you can collaborate with other people on it, usually you find something that's going on. For companies, from ours, one of the things that I said to my folks is that the modern organizations are different than the ones of old. The ones of old was people got in a career, they stayed in a career, away they went. Now people can move around so quickly. So developing relationships and helping to understand the VABEs of your employees or your clients and customers, because they can move around so quickly to others nowadays. If you can make those contacts and relationships, it is so much easier to keep them as employees. And they also help you find other employees because they like the place they're working. So they want their friends to work there too. So you start to get that thing. This modern organization is an ecosystem of living, breathing, organically connected parts. It's all of the people, whether it be internal or external with your partners, your vendors, your suppliers, whatever. And if that whole ecosystem is fed well and it's collaborated well, it's going to grow better than you can ever imagine. It's phenomenal, some of the things that I've seen over the years. But it needs to be fed well. You have to pay attention to all of those things you and I talked about. You have to feed those relationships all the time, because if you forget them, the relationship's gone. And so you can grow this thing phenomenally if you really look after it and nurture it and tender it. And as Clary and Ida showed us, break bread and make sure that you keep up with the people that are around you.
Those are great closing words. You have been, in my opinion, one of the greats in the electrical industry. And I think your friends, Peter Vickery, Ken Mescal, Angelo Gravina, and Albert Singh will wholeheartedly agree. Big brother, thank you for joining me today to have a chat about relationships and connections. As always, there's a lot to digest in these episodes. In my next episode, we're going to discuss health and safety issues with a very good friend, Mike Doherty. Mike is very passionate about safety and how it is the core of day-to-day activities and businesses. Look forward to that. See you next time on Powerful Connections. Thanks for listening to this episode of Powerful Connections. Get in touch with me on my website at dgg5advising.com or find me on LinkedIn at Dean G. Gatien. See you on the next episode.